When someone you love dies, one of the first things you may have to do is tell other people. And in the middle of shock, grief, and practical decisions, that can feel like far too much to carry at once. Who do you tell first? What do you actually say? Should you call, text, or post something online? And when it comes to work, are you entitled to time off? Or does that depend on who has died? In this video, we'll walk through all of that. By the end, you'll know how to share the news with family and friends, how to write a funeral announcement or obituary, what to think about before posting on social media, and what bereavement and compassionate leave can look like in the workplace. As a family-run direct cremation funeral provider, we take pride in providing information and practical support at what can be an incredibly difficult time, because having a clear next step can often make things feel a little more manageable. When someone dies, the painful reality is that practical tasks can't wait, and telling people is often the hardest one of all. For the people closest to the person who has died, immediate family, closest friends, the people who need to hear it directly, a phone call or in-person conversation is usually best. Even when the words are difficult, those relationships warrant that personal approach. For wider circles, colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances, or people you don't feel able to call one by one, a written message is completely appropriate. Whichever method you choose, keep it clear and brief. Include the person's full name, the fact that they have died, and, once you have the details, information about the funeral or memorial. You don't need to explain everything. A short and honest message is often enough. It also helps to remember that for the person receiving your message, this may be the moment their own grief begins. With that in mind, a calm and compassionate tone can make the news easier to receive, and one of the first questions many people ask after that is, how do I tell friends in a way that still feels personal without having to repeat the same painful conversation over and over? Telling friends can feel especially difficult because friendships often sit somewhere between family and the wider world. With close friends, it's usually best to tell them personally before they see anything online. Finding out through a social media post can leave people feeling hurt or excluded, even if that was never your intention. When you speak to them, try not to put pressure on yourself to say it perfectly. You don't need to have every detail ready. A simple sentence is enough. Something like, I wanted to let you know that Dad died this morning. I'm still processing it, but I didn't want you to hear it somewhere else first. For friends who are more distant, either emotionally or geographically, a text, email, or message is absolutely fine. Warmth and clarity matter more than formality. One practical thing that often helps is making a simple list of who needs to know. Not because this is a cold or administrative task, but because grief can make it hard to think clearly, and lists can reduce the chance of someone being missed. Once people know that someone has died, the next step is often a different kind of message altogether. The funeral announcement. A funeral announcement isn't quite the same as a death announcement. A death announcement tells people what has happened. A funeral announcement tells them what happens next, when the service is, where it will be held, and whether it's open to others. The details to include are usually straightforward. The full name of the person who has died, the date of death, the date, time, and location of the service, whether the funeral is open to everyone or private, and any requests from the family, such as no flowers, preferences for attire, or donations to a chosen charity. You may also want to include a brief sentence about the person, something simple that reflects who they were. The tone can vary depending on where you're sharing it. A newspaper notice will often be more formal. A group message to friends can be warmer and more conversational. One small but important step is to ask someone else to check the details before the announcement goes out. In a time like this, it's easy for dates, addresses, or postcodes to be entered incorrectly, and even a small error can cause unnecessary stress later. And for many families now, one of the places those messages are shared is social media. For some, Facebook has become one of the most practical ways to announce a death. That's not because it's impersonal. Often, it's because it reaches people you may not have another way to contact. Old friends, former colleagues, extended relatives, or people from earlier parts of someone's life. If you do decide to post on Facebook, there are a few things worth thinking through first. Start with privacy settings. Decide whether the post should be public, visible only to friends, or limited to a smaller group. Think about comments as well. Some families find it comforting when people leave condolences and memories in one place. Others may prefer something more private. Keep the wording respectful and sincere. Even if you're posting from your own personal account, this may be the first time many people are hearing the news. It can also help to speak to close family members first, especially if not everyone feels comfortable with social media. A short conversation beforehand can prevent misunderstandings at an already sensitive time. One feature some people don't know about is Facebook memorialization. This allows a profile to become a space where people can continue to leave messages and share memories after someone has died. For some families, that becomes meaningful. For others, it may not feel right. What matters most is that the decision feels appropriate for the person and the people closest to them. And if you want to say more than a brief announcement, if you want to honor the person's life in writing, that's where an obituary comes in. An obituary does two things at once. It lets people know that someone has died, and it gives a sense of who that person was. That can make it feel like a lot of pressure. But an obituary doesn't need to capture everything. It just needs to feel truthful and personal. Most obituaries include the basic facts: full name, age, date and place of birth, date and place of death, close family members, and funeral details if you want to include them. From there, the part written for the people who love them, a short account of their life. That might include family, work, interests, community, or a few details that make them immediately recognizable to the people who knew them. Often, the most memorable line in an obituary isn't the most formal one. It's the detail that sounds like the person, a favorite saying, a familiar habit, a hobby, or the role they played in other people's lives. If you're writing one, start earlier than you think you need to and expect to revise it. Ask other family members for details too. They may remember something important that you've forgotten in the fog of grief. And if you're submitting it to a newspaper, check their word limits first. Many obituaries fall in the 150 to 300 word range, but publication rules can vary. For many people, though, the next worry is less about what to write and more about what to do at work. Grief often doesn't come at a convenient time, and for many people, one of the most difficult things after a death is having to think about work while they're still in shock. In the UK, there isn't a general statutory right to compassionate leave in every bereavement situation. There is, however, one important exception. If you're a parent, guardian, or primary caregiver whose child under 18 has died, or you have experienced a stillbirth after 24 weeks of pregnancy, you may be entitled to 2 weeks of bereavement leave under Jack's law. Depending on your employment circumstances, that leave may also be paid. The law applies broadly beyond biological parents, including adoptive parents and those fostering to adopt, legal guardians, and foster parents. Anyone who has lived with the child and held day-to-day responsibility for their care for at least 4 weeks prior to the death. Partners of any of the above, where they are living in an enduring family relationship. For other bereavements, time off usually depends on your employer's policy. Many employers do offer compassionate or bereavement leave, but the amount of time and whether it is paid can vary quite a lot. It's also worth knowing that compassionate leave can cover more than bereavement. In some workplaces, it may also apply to serious illness, emergencies, or major family crises. If you need to request time off, contact your line manager or HR department as soon as you feel able. You don't need to explain every detail. In most cases, it's enough to say who has died and, if relevant, when the funeral will take place. If your request is refused or you need more time than you've been offered, there may be other options, including annual leave or in some cases sick leave if grief is affecting your mental or physical health. That leads into another question many people ask. What kind of leave do I actually request for the funeral itself? This is one of those questions where people often hope there's a simple rule, but in reality, it depends on your employer, your contract, and your relationship to the person who has died. for the funeral of a close family member, such as a spouse, parent, or child, many employers will usually offer compassionate or bereavement leave. For a friend, more distant relative or colleague, the position is often less clear. In those cases, you may need to request annual leave or ask your employer to use their discretion. That uncertainty can be frustrating, especially when you are already dealing with loss. But the most effective approach is usually the simplest one. Be direct about what you need. You might say that you have experienced a bereavement, that you need time to attend the funeral, and that you would like to understand what leave options are available to you. And if you're unsure what your workplace offers, check your contract or employee handbook first. Many people discover they have more flexibility than they expected, but support at work is about more than the day of the funeral. For many people, the harder part comes later. One of the things people may notice about grief is that the practical support can end long before the grief does. Once the immediate arrangements are over and the people around you have returned to their own lives, grief can take on a different shape, quieter perhaps, but no less present. That's why bereavement in the workplace matters beyond the first few days. Good employers understand that grief does not follow a timetable. They make space for honest conversations, they check in more than once, and they don't assume someone is back to normal just because they are back at their desk. If you're an employer or manager, a few things can make a real difference. Be flexible where you can, check in regularly rather than only once, make sure your bereavement policy is clear and easy to find, and help create a culture where grief isn't something people feel they have to hide. And if you're the person who is grieving, it's worth remembering this. Asking for support at work is not unreasonable. It's a practical response to a difficult time. You aren't asking for special treatment, you're asking for understanding. When someone dies, the practical tasks can feel like the last thing you want to face, but knowing what to say, who to tell, and what support may be available can make an overwhelming time feel a little more manageable. We've linked the articles featured in this video in the description below, including templates and examples you can use if you need help writing a message, announcement, or obituary. At Aura, we offer prepaid funeral plans and direct cremation services across the UK. If you'd like to take one practical step today, start with the resource in the description that feels most relevant to you right now. And if you want to talk things through, Aura is here with straightforward support, no pressure, and no hidden costs.